238 massive steel cranes currently loom over the skyline of Toronto, Canada, a number that eclipses the construction activity of almost any other metropolitan area in the Western Hemisphere. Rising above the limestone and glass, these machines signal a relentless vertical expansion that defies the geographic constraints of the Great Lakes. These yellow giants operate around the clock, hoisting thousands of tons of steel and glass into the humid air. Within the financial core, the vibration of piled drivers echoes against the sheer walls of Canada's tallest skyscrapers. Growth is constant. Below the asphalt, a different kind of evolution has been occurring for over 2 centuries, turning a muddy colonial outpost into a global financial powerhouse. John Graves Simcoe, the first lieutenant governor of Upper Canada, stood on the sandy shores of the harbour in 1793 and envisioned a naval base named York. During this era, the landscape was a dense thicket of old-growth forest and swampy river mouths. Centuries later, the same ground supports a concrete forest. History demands focus. The original town site was a modest grid of 10 blocks near the waterfront, where the air smelled of wood smoke and damp earth. British surveyors meticulously mapped the Toronto Passage, an ancient indigenous trade route used by the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples for generations. These early planners struggled with the muddy York reputation, as heavy rains turned the unpaved streets into impassable mires of clay. Early docks were flimsy wooden structures, but they laid the groundwork for a maritime gateway to the interior of the continent. Trade dictated survival. By the mid-19th century, the arrival of the railway transformed the city's DNA, as steel tracks began to sever the connection between the downtown core and the water's edge. In 1834, the town officially incorporated as the City of Toronto, shedding its colonial nickname. Architect Edward James Lennox later defined the city's Victorian ambition with the construction of Old City Hall, a massive sandstone structure that required nearly a decade to complete. This building stood as a monument to a city that was finally finding its feet. Then came the fire. On the night of April 19, 1904, a flame ignited in a neckwear factory on Wellington Street West and quickly spiraled out of control. Strong winds pushed the blaze through the industrial heart of the city, destroying 104 buildings and causing $10 million in damages. Firefighters struggled with freezing temperatures as water from their hoses turned to ice on the charred remains of warehouses. This catastrophe forced a total reimagining of urban safety and masonry construction. Brick and stone became the mandatory materials for the new Toronto. Heavy timber was replaced by fire-resistant steel frames and thick granite facades. Construction workers swarmed the ruins, clearing away tons of debris to make way for a more resilient commercial district. Development accelerated. The construction of Union Station between 1913 and 1927 marked a turning point in scale, utilizing 75,000 tons of Indiana limestone and Zumbro River stone. This massive transit hub was designed to handle tens of thousands of passengers daily, signaling Toronto's role as the beating heart of Canadian rail travel. Architects pointing at models envisioned a city that would one day rival New York or London. World War II further pushed the industrial limits of the city, with the waterfront turning into a hive of munitions manufacturing and shipbuilding. Cargo ships in harbor carried essential supplies across the Atlantic, while the local population swelled with workers from across the globe. Post-war Toronto faced a housing crisis and a desperate need for modern infrastructure. Planners turned to concrete. In the 1960s, the skyline began its radical transformation with the arrival of the Toronto Dominion Centre, a cluster of black steel and glass towers designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. These buildings introduced the international style to Canada, stripping away Victorian ornament in favor of geometric precision. Each tower required thousands of tons of structural steel and miles of copper wiring. This was the birth of the modern financial district. Not everyone welcomed the change. Urban activist Jane Jacobs moved to the city in 1968 and famously led the fight against the Spadina Expressway, a project that would have demolished historic neighborhoods to make room for highway cloverleafs. Her victory ensured that Toronto remained a city of neighborhoods rather than just a collection of transit corridors. Pedestrians crossing busy intersection zones became the priority in her vision of urban life. The streetscape was saved. However, the most iconic symbol of the city's transformation was yet to come. In 1973, Canadian National Railways set out to build a communications tower that would solve reception problems caused by the new skyscrapers. The CN Tower remains a feat of extreme engineering, standing at a staggering height of 553.33 meters. Engineers used a technique called slip forming, where a circular mold was continuously raised by hydraulic jacks as 40,500 cubic meters of concrete were poured. Workers labored in 24-hour shifts for 40 months to ensure the structure was perfectly vertical. When the tower finally topped out in 1976, it was the tallest freestanding structure in the world. Helicopter aerial over-city footage from the era shows the sheer scale of the concrete needle against the low-rise horizon. This landmark redefined the city's identity. While the tower reached for the sun, another massive network was growing beneath the feet of the citizens. The path system is the world's largest underground shopping complex, spanning over 30 kilometers of tunnels and walkways. It connects more than 75 buildings, 6 subway stations, and a major railway terminal. This subterranean city was designed to protect office workers from the brutal Canadian winters, where temperatures can drop to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Digging these tunnels required navigating a complex web of existing subway lines and ancient utility pipes. Engineers utilized specialized tunneling shields to carve through the compacted glacial till. Underground pipes and fiber optics now pulse through this hidden layer, carrying the data that fuels the Toronto Stock Exchange. The city never sleeps. Another hidden marvel is the Deep Lake Water Cooling System, an innovative environmental project that uses the cold water of Lake Ontario to air-condition the downtown core. 3 massive pipes extend 5 kilometers into the lake, reaching depths where the water remains a constant 4 degrees Celsius. This water passes through heat exchangers, cooling a closed-loop system that serves over 100 buildings. This engineering feat reduces electricity demand by 75% compared to traditional chillers. It is a silent, invisible lung for the city. Beneath the pavement, the ghosts of the past still linger in the form of buried rivers. Garrison Creek and Tattle Creek were once open waterways that defined the local geography, but they were encased in brick sewers during the 19th century push for sanitation. Today, these lost rivers still flow through Victorian masonry tunnels, carrying storm water toward the lake. You can still hear the rushing water beneath certain manhole covers in the West End. Urban explorers occasionally venture into these brick caverns to document the craftsmanship of a bygone era. History is literally layered. In the eastern part of the city, the port lands are currently undergoing one of the most ambitious urban engineering projects in North American history. This 356-hectare industrial site was once a vast wetland before it was filled with coal ash and contaminated soil in the early 1900s. To unlock this land for residential use, engineers are essentially rewilding the mouth of the Don River. They are excavating a new naturalized river valley to protect the area from catastrophic flooding. This project involves moving 1.4 million cubic meters of earth and installing massive flood protection gates. Construction crews are operating heavy machinery to create new parks and bridges that will support a future community of 100,000 people. This is a billion-dollar gamble on the city's future. Cement trucks are a constant presence on the dusty roads of the port lands. Nearby, the Gardiner Expressway, a crumbling, elevated highway built in the 1950s, remains a subject of intense political debate. Some want it torn down to reunite the city with its waterfront, while others argue it is an essential artery for the 200,000 vehicles that use it daily. The cost of repairing the eastern section is estimated at over $1 billion. This concrete ribbon represents the tension between 20th century automotive dreams and 21st century urban reality. Scaffolding towers currently surround large sections of the highway as crews work to replace the aging deck. Infrastructure is a heavy burden. High above the Gardiner, the skyline continues its relentless push toward the supertall category. The one, located at the intersection of Bloor and Yonge, is set to become Canada's first building to exceed 300 meters in height. Architect Norman Foster designed the tower with a unique bronze-tinted exoskeleton that handles the structural loads, allowing for vast open spaces inside. Welding steel beams at these heights requires specialized cranes and elite ironworkers who navigate the winds of the upper atmosphere. Drone flying through clouds shots capture the incredible geometry of this rising giant. It is a symbol of a new global Toronto. The city has become a magnet for international capital, with the real estate market driving a residential boom that shows no signs of slowing. However, this growth brings significant challenges, including the highest housing prices in the country. Old neighborhoods like the Distillery District have been preserved and transformed into cultural hubs. Once the largest distillery in the British Empire, the Gooderham and Worts complex features the largest collection of Victorian-era industrial architecture in North America. Its cobblestone streets and red brick warehouses now house galleries and theaters rather than whiskey barrels. This successful adaptive reuse serves as a blueprint for how the city can honor its history while embracing the future. Cinematic fog over rooftops often settles in these narrow alleys during the autumn months. As the climate changes, Toronto is also preparing for more extreme weather events. The city's Resilient 2 strategy focuses on upgrading the power grid and expanding the urban tree canopy to mitigate the heat island effect. New skyscrapers are now required to have green roofs or solar panels to reduce their environmental footprint. Rainy neon streets reflect the glow of high-efficiency LED lighting that has replaced the old orange sodium lamps. The city is becoming smarter and more efficient. Subway train arriving at station announcements echo in 4 different languages, reflecting the fact that over half of the population was born outside of Canada. This diversity is the true engine of the city's transformation. From the first indigenous paths to the deepest lakewater cooling pipes, Toronto is a city built on layers of innovation and survival. The transformation of the waterfront into a series of parks and transit-oriented communities represents a return to the water that John Graves Simcoe first surveyed in 1793. Tide-hitting ancient seawall ruins in the lower harbor serves as a reminder of how much the shoreline has been altered by human hands. Every ton of concrete and every mile of fiber optic cable contributes to a narrative of a city that refuses to stay static. Modern Toronto is a machine for living, a complex organism of steel, glass, and human ambition. The city's legacy is found not just in its height, but in its ability to reinvent itself after fire, flood, and economic shifts. Urban evolution is a never-ending process. As the sun sets behind the CN Tower, casting long shadows over the lake, the 238 cranes continue their work. They are the architects of a future that is still being written in the sky. This is a city that works. Through every era, Toronto has proven that its true strength lies in its capacity for radical change. The engineering marvels of tomorrow are already being dreamed of in the offices of architects pointing at models today. The story of Toronto is the story of the modern world, a relentless climb toward a more connected and vertical future. Global cities are never finished. This metropolis stands as a testament to the power of human ingenuity to shape the earth to its will. Looking forward, the challenges are great, but the foundation is solid. Toronto will continue to rise. Moving into the next century, the focus will shift from simple expansion to sustainable integration. The secret history of the city is still being uncovered, one excavation at a time. Beneath the glass and steel, the heart of the old town still beats. The city remains a work in progress. It is a monument to the possible. Final reflections on the city reveal a place that has grown from a muddy naval base into a beacon of modern urbanism. The transformation is complete, yet it is only just beginning. Urban history is a cycle of destruction and creation. Toronto lives in that cycle. Long after the current cranes are dismantled, the city will stand as a peak of human achievement on the shores of the Great Lakes. The horizon is always changing. That is the nature of the city. Evolution is the only constant. Deep in the bedrock, the story continues. Toronto is the future. This is its untold story. The sky is the only limit. Progress never sleeps. In the end, the city belongs to those who build it. The transformation continues. Focus on the light. The city is alive. This is the legacy of the North. Toronto, the untold story of the world's most vertical transformation. Growing, rising, surviving, this is the city of today and tomorrow, moving forward always, concrete and dreams, the path is clear, construction never ends, the city is a marvel, end of the line, Toronto remains, progress is the only way, verticality is the destiny, history is written in stone, glass reflects the soul, the city is a masterpiece, engineering defines us, Toronto is home. Future is now, evolution is key. The city stands tall, glass towers, steel hearts, Toronto, Canada. Transformation complete, reality is here, the world watches, Toronto rises, continuous growth, engineering the future. Urban soul, city of light, steel and glass, Toronto, transformation, reality. Now finish, outdone city, forever, rising, always end.